Hey everyone, welcome. Pull up a chair, get comfortable. We're going to take a gentle, unhurried walk through London as it looked and felt in the 1600s. No rush today, we'll move slowly, notice the small things, listen to the sounds, breathe the air of that long-ago city. Almost 500,000 people lived here already, making it one of the largest places in Europe. And yet it still felt surprisingly intimate in many ways. Everyone seemed to know someone who knew someone. The story begins, as so many London stories do, with the river. The Thames was the lifeblood, the main street, the boundary, and the connector all at once. Boats of every size nudged against each other from dawn until the light failed. Watermen called out for passengers in their distinctive, sharp voices. Barges groaned under loads of coal, timber, hay, grain. Merchant ships fresh from the Low Countries or farther away rode at anchor, their crews speaking a dozen languages. The smell of river mud, tar, fish, wood smoke, and wet rope hung over everything. And right in the middle of that busy waterway stood the one fixed crossing everyone had to use, Old London Bridge. Picture approaching it from the north on a bright morning. You come down Fish Street Hill, the roadway narrowing as it nears the water. To your left rises the handsome stone tower of St. Magnus the Martyr Church, bells ringing softly for morning prayer. Ahead, the bridge appears, but not like any bridge you know today. It looks more like a long, narrow street that someone forgot to finish building on dry land. Houses and shops stand shoulder to shoulder from one end to the other, 3 and 4 stories high, some leaning slightly outward so their upper floors almost touch across the roadway. Timber frames, whitewashed plaster, leaded windows catching the light. Signs swing gently above doorways, painted gloves for the glover, a golden pestle for the apothecary, a red lion for the tavern. Step onto the bridge itself, and the noise changes at once. The hollow rumble of cartwheels on wooden planks replaces the stone cobbles. Horseshoes clatter. Hawkers call from open shop fronts. Children dart between legs. Every few paces the smell changes. Fresh bread, then spices, then the sharp tang of dye from a clothworker's vat, then fish again because someone is selling eels from a barrel. Look down between the gaps in the buildings, and you catch glimpses of the river far below, squeezed through narrow stone arches. The water moves fast here, foaming white where it meets the piers. Boatmen shout warnings to each other as they shoot the gaps. "Where the starling?" And sometimes you hear the sickening crunch of wood against stone when someone misjudges. People lived their whole lives up here. A woman leans from a second-floor window to shake a rug. Dust drifts down onto the street below. An apprentice leans on a sill upstairs, whistling to a friend passing on foot. In the tiny rooms behind those windows, families ate, slept, argued, prayed, gave birth, sometimes died, all with the constant motion of the bridge vibrating through the floorboards. Fire was the great fear. Buckets hung ready on hooks. Hooks and chains stood by for pulling down burning thatch if a blaze started. Everyone knew how quickly flame could run along these tight-packed timbers. Yet the bridge endured. It had stood since the late 12th century in one form or another, and by the 1600s it carried not just local traffic, but the whole pulse of the kingdom. A king might cross it in state, velvet and gold glittering. A condemned man might cross it last on his way to execution at Southwark. Foreign merchants crossed it with samples of silk or pepper. Country people drove geese and sheep across it to market. Everyone passed beneath the stone gate at the southern end, where, on occasion, the heads of traders stared down with empty eyes, a reminder that power watched and remembered. And always beneath your feet, the Thames kept moving. If you paused at one of the few gaps between buildings, little drawbridges that could be raised for tall ships, you looked straight down into the rush of tidewater. In winter, when really hard frosts came, those narrowed arches helped the river freeze. Then the impossible happened. People walked out onto the ice under the very houses they normally lived above. Makeshift booths appeared. Barbers set up chairs. Men played football. Ladies strolled arm in arm. For a few days, the deadly current became solid ground. Then the thaw came. The ice cracked with terrifying groans, and everyone scrambled back to the banks. The bridge stayed crowded, dirty, noisy, dangerous, inconvenient, and completely indispensable. Until well into the 18th century, it remained the only permanent road crossing over the Thames in central London. If you wanted to go north to south or south to north with a cart or on horseback, this was the place. No wonder people called it simply London Bridge, as though no other existed. Now let's step off the northern end, turn west, and walk slowly out of the tight-packed city toward open ground. After a while, the houses begin to thin, the air smells less of smoke and more of grass, and there, standing almost alone, is Buckingham House, before anyone called it a palace.
In the late 1600s and early 1700s, it was still a private gentleman's residence built for the Duke of Buckingham. Red brick, tall windows, neat gardens stretching toward what felt like countryside. From its upper floors, you could look east and see the faint haze of London's chimneys, but you could also look west toward fields and hedgerows. No roar of carts here. Birds sang in the trees. A servant might be sweeping leaves from a gravel path. It was quiet enough that you noticed your own footsteps. The house marked the place where the city finally sighed and gave way to open land. In those days, the boundary between urban and rural was still real and close. You could walk out of the smoke in half an hour and feel the world breathe differently. Let's stay with change for a moment, because one September in 1666, the city changed more violently than at any other time in its history. It began just after midnight on Sunday, 2 September, in a bakery on Pudding Lane. A spark, perhaps, from an oven, a pile of straw, then flame. At first, people thought little of it. Small fires happened often. But that year, the summer had been dry. Timber houses stood shoulder to shoulder. Many upper stories overhung the street, so roofs almost met overhead. A strong east wind blew steadily. By dawn, the fire was moving house to house faster than men could run with buckets. Imagine standing near Ludgate on Monday afternoon. The street is full of people carrying bundles, dragging trunks, leading children by the hand. Smoke stings your eyes. Ahead, flames lick up the sides of buildings. Church bells ring wildly, not for service, but to call for help or to warn. In the distance, the old medieval St. Paul's Cathedral stands huge against the sky. Its wooden roof has caught. Sparks shower down like burning snow. Soon the lead sheets on the roof melt and pour in silver rivers down the stone walls. The heat is so great that paving stones crack. People say the fire sounds like constant thunder. Move to the South Bank on Tuesday evening, looking across toward Tower Wharf. The North Shore is one long ribbon of orange and red. Flames leap higher than church steeples. London Bridge stands dark against the glow, spared because the fire could not jump the water and because householders had torn down nearby buildings earlier as a firebreak. The Tower of London looms to the right, its walls blackened but standing. At the center of the burning skyline, the cathedral burns like a beacon. People miles away can read letters by its light. The smell of charred wood and molten lead carries on the wind. 4 days later, more than 13,000 houses, 87 churches, dozens of company halls, the Royal Exchange, the Customs House, most of the old walled city lay in smoking ruins. Yet from those ashes came the possibility of something new. Wider streets, stone and brick instead of timber, better sewers. Christopher Wren and others dreamed of a rebuilt London that would be safer, grander, healthier. The fire was a tragedy beyond words, but it was also the end of one London and the beginning of another. Walk east now, downstream along the riverbank, until you reach the most forbidding and important building in the realm, the Tower of London. Even from a distance it feels different, massive, squat, ancient. Pale stone walls, round towers at the corners, the river lapping at its wharf. By the 1600s, it had already stood for nearly 600 years, yet it remained the strongest symbol of royal power. It was never only a prison, though history remembers it most for that. It was a fortress controlling the eastern approach to the city, an arsenal holding thousands of weapons and barrels of gunpowder, a mint where silver was turned into coin, a treasury, a record office storing charters and state papers, a menagerie with lions, leopards, even an occasional elephant, gifts from foreign rulers. And deep in the strongest vaults, guarded day and night, lay the crown jewels. The darker side was the prison. Traitors' Gate opened directly onto the river, so important prisoners could be brought in secretly by boat. Anne Boleyn, Thomas More, Lady Jane Grey, Walter Raleigh, Guy Fawkes, their names are carved into the story of the place. Some left alive, many did not. The Beauchamp Tower still shows graffiti scratched by prisoners waiting for trial or execution. Yet the tower was also a working household. Guards drilled in the outer ward, clerks wrote in candle-lit offices, ravens, protected by ancient superstition, hopped across the grass. Life went on, ordinary and extraordinary side by side. Let's turn back into the city now and walk a little north to one of its widest, brightest streets, Cheapside. In the late 1630s, Cheapside was London's show street. Goldsmiths, mercers selling shimmering silks, haberdashers with ribbons and lace, the finest shops stood here. But more than commerce happened on Cheapside. It was the ceremonial way. Coronations, royal entries, state visits, the processions passed along this road under arches of flowers and tapestries hung from windows.
One May day in 1638, the street was transformed. Marie de Medici, Queen Mother of France, had come to visit her daughter Henrietta Maria, wife of Charles I. The roadway is lined with soldiers in bright uniforms. Spectators cram every balcony and upper window. Temporary stages stand at intervals. At the center rises the tall Gothic Cheapside Cross, one of the old Eleanor crosses, carved and painted, a place where people met to talk and watch the world. Trumpets sound. The procession moves slowly. Horses with jeweled harness, ladies in silk, gentlemen with plumes. Cheers rise and fall. Yet, beneath the celebration, unease simmered. Henrietta Maria was Catholic. Her chapel at court, her French attendants, her influence over the king, many Londoners distrusted it all. The city was already drifting toward division. 3 years later, civil war would split families and turn neighbor against neighbor. Cheapside would see soldiers again, but not in parade. Today, you can still walk the same stretch of road near St. Mary Le Bow Church. The surface is tarmac now, the buildings modern, the cross long gone, but the gentle curve of the street remembers the processions. A short journey by water brings us to Westminster, the place where power and prayer met. In 1647, the view from across the river shows 3 great buildings close together. On the left, the old Palace of Westminster, rambling, ancient, full of small rooms and corridors, home to Parliament. By the 1640s, it had become the battleground between King Charles I and those who believed Parliament should limit royal power. The King's attempt to arrest 5 members inside the chamber in 1642 shocked everyone and helped light the fuse of civil war. Beside it stands Westminster Hall, already 4 centuries old, with its vast timber roof held up without a single pillar in the middle. Coronations began here, state trials were held here, great feasts filled it with light and music. It was a room where kings were made and sometimes unmade. To the right rises Westminster Abbey, stone upon stone, solemn and beautiful. Every English monarch since William the Conqueror had been crowned inside its walls. Many lay buried there. In 1647, the Abbey felt caught between past and future. Religious arguments raged. Bishops or no bishops, set prayers or free worship, altar or table. The sacred and the political could no longer be separated. In front of it all, Westminster stairs lead down to the water. Boats arrive and depart constantly. The river is still the quickest road to power.
A member of Parliament steps ashore, robes over his arm. A bishop arrives for a meeting. Messengers hurry up the steps with letters. The Thames carries them all directly to the doors of government and faith. A little downstream lies the palace the Stuart kings loved best, Whitehall. It was never a single building, it was a small city of its own. Halls, chapels, galleries, council chambers, private apartments, tennis courts, gardens, tilt yards, sprawling along the riverbank. The grandest way to arrive was by water. You landed at the Privy Stairs, walked through scented gardens, past guards in scarlet, entered rooms hung with tapestries and lit by candles. Here the king dined in state. Here ambassadors bowed. Here masks and dances filled winter nights. Charles I commissioned Rubens to paint the ceiling of the banqueting house, still there today, glowing with color. In 1649, Charles stepped out of a window of that very building onto the scaffold. Whitehall saw the height of royal pomp and its sudden fall. Most of the palace burned in 1698. Only the banqueting house remains, quiet now, holding memories. One last journey, upriver this time, past meadows and willow trees to Richmond Palace. Red brick towers rise above green lawns. Long galleries look out on gardens and the shining river. Deer move in the park beyond. Richmond was a favorite of Henry VII, who rebuilt it, and of his son Henry VIII, and of Elizabeth I. The air here smelled of grass and water instead of coal smoke. Elizabeth came here in her final weeks in March 1603. She was 69, weary, perhaps already ill. She died on the 24th, the last Tudor monarch. James of Scotland rode south to take the throne. After that, Richmond slowly faded. Later kings preferred other houses. The buildings were pulled down or left to ruin. Today, you can still walk the river path at Richmond and see traces, a fragment of wall, the shape of an old gate, hidden among modern homes and gardens. The palace that once echoed with laughter and music is mostly memory now. So we come full circle, back to the river, back to the city that keeps growing over its own past. These places, the crowded bridge, the quiet mansion, the burned streets, the stone fortress, the processional way, the halls of power, the lost palace by the meadows, they are all part of the same story. London in the 1600s was noisy, smoky, dangerous, beautiful, divided, hopeful. People lived full lives in its shadow. Kings ruled and fell. Fires raged and were rebuilt from. The river kept flowing. Looking at these scenes, slowly brought back to life by AI, I feel how close it all still is. Some streets follow the same lines, some church towers still stand. The Thames still carries light the same way on a spring morning. We walk over layers of time every day without thinking. Thank you for walking with me so slowly today. If there is another time, another city, another quiet corner of the past you would like to visit together, just say the word. I'll be here. Until then, take care and keep wondering about the days that came before us.